NFL, the offseason spinning has begun, and the D in Big D stands for New Day as the Cowboys introduce Brian Schottenheimer as their new head coach. He brings 25 years of experience as an assistant. First-time head coach, 4-year deal, puts him in Dallas through 2028, which notably is when Dak Prescott's current contract runs through. Here's Jerry Jones with more on the hire.
Now, I get my proverbial ass kicked over needing people in my comfort zone. Without this thing being about me in any way, if you don't think I can't operate out of my comfort zone, you're so wrong. It's unbelievable. This is as big a risk as you could take. As big a risk as you could take. No head coaching experience. Yes, to some, and it might be couched as a less than glamorous hire. What I would say to you is I got here taking shots and not shoddy shots. I got here taking shots.
Not shoddy. Not shoddy.
He couldn't wait to get that
Couldn't
line
wait to get
off.
that. Yeah, he set that one up.
I'm going to say shots. Then I'm going to hit him with the shoddy.
Oh.
They're going to be like, ooh-wee.
What just happened?
The guy's sitting right there.
Beside him.
This is a less than glamorous hire, Brian. Any thoughts?
It's a risk.
Big risk. Biggest risk I've ever taken since I hit oil. Biggest risk. You don't think I take risk?
Man.
I'm just going to tell y'all this right now. I'm on social media. I am a genius at it. I crush it. I spent 8 minutes watching my phone, watching that press conference, and I could not turn away because it was the train wreck that everybody came. You can't turn when I saw the one-handed air quote by Stephen when he talked about
That's coming.
the drought.
Yeah.
I was like, they have lost. They've lost all.
Let's just play it. Let's play it since you mentioned it, and then we'll just go all in on it.
It's unbelievable.
So this is what I meant when I said, wait till you're not going to believe what they wouldn't say. So Stephen Jones addressed how long it has been, which is 29 seasons, that the Cowboys haven't even been in the NFC Championship game, and this is how he said it.
You always have to evaluate, where it didn't go right last year. And obviously we're also evaluating where it didn't go right, in terms of, this drought that people say we're in terms of a championship game or a Super Bowl.
It only took 40 years in biblical times to find the promised land. 40. We went on a circle of the desert 40 years. We're at 30.
So here's
The drought.
Like, if I had these people's money, I would not care about anything anybody had to say about me and the way I operate my business. Like, I just wouldn't pay attention. But they're clearly paying some attention to it, right?
They are.
Because that's what this means, right? Like, people say drought. It's probably actually a lot worse than a drought.
Yes.
It's a famine, or it's an ice age, more like a drought. But what Jerry's talking about, like, I get my proverbial ass kicked. Like, he's saying, like, this is what people say about me to criticize me. My response is, who cares? Yeah. Like, if you really want it to be, this is my team, and I'm going to run it the way I want to, then sort of, say it with your chest, right? I mean, like, actually, like, believe in it and stand by it.
I think the success and financial security that he has is not the same as being celebrated. And I think that's what it comes down to, is he wants to convince us that he is the Jerry Jones that won 3 Super Bowls back in the day, and he's the Jerry Jones that can build this team. And they've been good. So while we do have fun with the way that he's been behaving recently, like, the teams haven't been awful. Like, there are some really terrible organizations in this sport and in other sports. The problem is the decisions that he makes they seem to make less and less sense as we go along. Because if you wanted to keep this staff, then keep the staff together and pay the coach that you have. Why would you try to keep this staff together with the offensive coordinator and then let the head coach walk away?
And they've also lost other staffers, right? The special teams coach left. So I think they were caught off guard. I think they thought they were going to get a deal done with Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, he didn't like the deal on the table and he left. So I think they were caught flat-footed. They hit this process a week in. They generally handle it a lot differently than other teams do anyway. Look, if you break it all the way down, like, Brian Schottenheimer's a first-time head coach. So is Ben Johnson. So is Aaron Glenn. So is Liam Cohen. We don't know. Brian Schottenheimer might be better than all three of those guys.
Yeah, right.
We don't know that. It just feels very odd and haphazard the way they're doing it.
Yeah. So who else was once a first-time head coach? Bill Belichick and Andy Reid, and everybody has to start somewhere. I feel bad for Brian Schottenheimer,
Absolutely.
a man who was quite literally born into this. He's Marty's son, and all the rest of that, and all of the questioning / vitriol is going to sound to him as though it's aimed at him, when I think really none of it is. There's no way of knowing whether he's going to be the greatest coach of all time, the worst coach of all time, or somewhere in between where most people are. What it is, however, unquestionably, is another example of Jerry doing what he has continued to do, which is put someone in that position who did not have other options, who does not in any way have the footing upon which to stand to say, no, we're going to do it a different way. He continues to be the person running the show. And that is, he tripled down on it with this move at a time later in his life where some of us thought, with the drought that they've been going through and how badly things went last year, that maybe this would be the time that he would step back with a little bit of self-analysis and say, you know what? Maybe I need to try something different. Maybe over the course of 29 years, it has been demonstrated that this hasn't worked the way I wanted to. Let me try something a little different. I don't know what that would have been, but it wouldn't have been this. And that, I think, is what people are reacting to.
You're 100% correct. And I think what Neek said probably lends to this, right, is you haven't been so bad. You've been good enough, right, to compete. McCarthy, go 12-5 3 years in a row. You win a playoff game. You get beat by Green Bay the year before. Now your quarterback gets hurt and the season kind of falls. But the reality of it is what he did to get himself in that position for this season all could have been laid at the feet of Jerry Jones, because he didn't do the things he needed to do to get their roster right to go be successful. And I think if you're Schottenheimer, who I actually like, I think he's a great football coach. I wish him the best, right? Like all these guys. But at the end of the day, how do you define success? That's a really difficult question when you're in Dallas. And I think it's unique because you might go 12-5, but you don't win the playoffs, you still have a job. You're linked with Dak Prescott. All the major pieces and parts are already kind of there. It's how do you define success for the Dallas Cowboys in a league now where you probably have the third best quarterback, right? Like as you're looking at the league, the way it's stacking up, it becomes more and more difficult. I'm just not sure how you figure it out.
Jerry Jones is always hiring coaches who don't really have other options. It's true, but he just had a coach walk away who doesn't have other options, who doesn't want to be there. So that speaks to, and I know Mike McCarthy hasn't put words to this, but I assume that he was going to get paid just as much as he was getting paid before to come back and coach there. And in that ballpark. So for him to not want to come back, and it's not that he's leaving to go to another job, it speaks to, as much as I hear positive things said about working for Jerry Jones, and I think most of us do, people like working there. It does say something that this coach is like, nah, I'm going to go do no job rather than come back and do this job. And then they hire Brian Schottenheimer.
Yeah, and just one final word of irony. I brought this up Sunday on Countdown. When Brian's father, Marty, whom we loved, worked here at ESPN.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, he worked at ESPN in between jobs, as most coaches do. And I hosted a show with him one time. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, he was so thorough and just terrific. Everybody loved Marty Schottenheimer. But the one thing I'll never forget he said to me, and I've quoted it a million times, is, if you're the coach of a football team and your players are looking over your shoulder at anyone, you have no chance to succeed. That was Marty saying that. Now here's his son taking this job with the definition of the person looking over. There has never been anyone who looked over a coach's shoulder more than Jerry Jones does. So I find there's some irony in that, and I know Brian knows that, and he goes into this and he'll take his best shot at it, and anyone in his position would have taken the job.
Of course, absolutely. He wasn't getting other interviews. This is his shot at doing something he's always wanted to do, and he's never got a shot at. And maybe he'll be great at it.
Right.
I keep going back to last year, and obviously different circumstances because you've done it before. Washington Commanders fans were not happy with the Dan Quinn hire. Like they thought they were settling at the end of the process, and obviously it's worked out for them. So we honestly don't know. These teams don't honestly know who's going to be a great coach and who's not. Jerry just decided, well, you know what? Rather than bringing somebody else's unproven coordinator, I'll just go with my own.
To me, it's not about the coach, man. It's about the pieces and parts.
Yeah.
Jerry's got to do his part to arm Schottenheimer to be successful. You have got to change. You have to get a good running game. You have to get defensive tackles. You have to build the roster so you can succeed. Howie Roseman is a great example. Build the roster. You guys all, you put the bash on Sirianni. So it's all everybody.
Coach of the year.
So Jerry, go be Howie. Go put all the talent you want in the group, and then let him go win or lose, and then you can talk about the coaching. But until you arm them and equip them to go win, you'll always look back at Jerry.
You know why that won't happen? Because that costs money.
Yeah. I'm with you.
He's got money.
And
don't spend it.
But he doesn't spend it on his football team. That is the best kept secret in the entire NFL is the Cowboys don't spend money the way other teams do. But let's do a little study on that.
Dak Prescott got an $80 million signing bonus.
Look up the actual cash outlay for every NFL team over the last, Darius, take it back the last 5 years, and you'll be surprised at what you might find. In the meantime, right now to football, the D in Big D stands for New Day in Dallas. The Cowboys introducing Brian Schottenheimer as their new head coach, brings 25 years of experience as an assistant to his first-time head coaching opportunity. It's a 4-year deal, puts him in Dallas through the same period that Dak Prescott is signed through. Here was Jerry Jones with more on the hire.
Now, I get my proverbial ass kicked over needing people in my comfort zone. Without this thing being about me in any way, if you don't think I can't operate out of my comfort zone, you're so wrong. It's unbelievable. This is as big a risk as you could take. As big a risk as you could take. No head coaching experience. Yes, to some, and it might be couched as a less than glamorous hire. What I would say to you is I got here taking shots and not shoddy shots. I got here taking shots.
I think we all need to take shots right now.
Patron.
That was just a very, very strange collection of things to say, right? You said you watched the entire thing on your phone, which you never do.
Never do. I mean, and I could not have been more captivated just because the things that they were saying like that. If you're shoddy sitting there, just feel how uncomfortable that moment is. I mean, you're literally talking about him, and he is 6 inches from you going, hey, I'm taking shots. Biggest risk I've ever taken. Like
not a glamorous hire.
And then you got your son on the other side, and he's air quoting a drought of biblical proportions, y'all. Like we found the promised land in 40. It's been 30, but it's a quote drought for Stephen. Like there's a reason I watched it for 8 minutes. It was insanity and painful and a number of different reasons why I could not turn away.
Let's play that one, too, for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Please.
So here's Stephen Jones on the other side of Brian Schottenheimer talking about how long it's been since the Cowboys have won a big game.
You always have to evaluate, where it didn't go right last year. And obviously we're also evaluating where it didn't go right, in terms of, this drought that people say we're in terms of a championship game or a Super Bowl.
So one thing, like the word drought was in the question that was asked.
Okay.
So that's, I think, part of, if there's any sort of halfway to defend it, the question was asked about a drought. And so
that's fine.
I just want to put that there and then we'll go to what it,
people aren't saying it.
Yeah.
So you can't, this is the thing that sometimes really, look, I get it. You're defending your own record, and you can't sit up there and say, look, we've gotten everything wrong for 30 years. And they haven't gotten everything wrong for 30 years. But the reality is, it is a drought. People aren't saying it. The second, they have the longest time since being in the NFC Championship game. They made it there after the 1995 season. The next most recent team, or the next longest drought in the NFC is the Bears, who went after the 2010 season. So there's by a margin of 15 years, they've gone the longest time. There are only 16 teams in the conference. So this, you're sort of, what you're saying there is you're putting that on other people.
Exactly.
Oh, well, people will say this or that about us. No, what we're saying is true.
Right.
Your team has not been in the NFL's Final Four in 3 decades. That would suggest, you might think, that would suggest that the people running it would say, let's analyze what part of this we've gotten wrong. They've gotten plenty of it right.
Exactly.
They've had really good teams. They've had good years. They got screwed on a bad call that one year at Lambeau Field. The Dez Cats should have been. And obviously they won 12 games in a row, 3 years, or whatever, 3 years in a row. They haven't gotten everything wrong. But you would think they would try and find something that they might do a little differently, when instead what it feels like they're doing is tripling down on a philosophy that has gotten us here.
It's kind of worse than that, in that it's not even tripling down on what they've done so far. It's like getting a budget version of what they've done before. And I'm trying to say this in a way that's not like disrespectful to Brian Schottenheimer, because he may be a great coach, but they had a coach there that was running this staff. And rather than bringing that coach back, they looked around the building and was like, who can do what he did?
Right.
We'll hire you. And again, Brian Schottenheimer might turn out to be a great coach, but he wasn't a coveted coordinator. He's not a guy who's gone on a bunch of interviews. It's hard to be confident about the direction that this organization is going if not only are they not doing something different, they're doing the same thing that they've done before, but a bit of a watered down version of it.
I think that's the thing that bothers people, right? And the thing we talk about on these shows, the thing that really bothers the Dallas Cowboys fans is, you're the Dallas Cowboys. Like, act like it, right? Like, go get a star coach, right? Don't be afraid to go out and spend in free agency, all that kind of stuff. Now, the people that run the Cowboys don't believe in free agency as a solution to, to your roster problems. They think this draft and develop, but there's a happy medium somewhere between that and do literally nothing at all to fill the holes that haven't been filled by your draft and develop. And then the coach thing, Jerry famously said, I could get 500 people to coach this team. And he's living it. And I think if you're a fan, you're seeing this hire going, that's just him doubling down on that idea of saying the head coach isn't important. And again, disclaimer again, Brian Schottenheimer, I don't know if he's going to be a good head coach. Maybe he is. But the fact of the matter is, it's not the hire that the fan base would have said, oh yeah, Cowboys, we're back, baby.
Right. It's kind of like he's always negotiating, even with Dak and CeeDee Lamb, right? It's like it comes to the end, and he does it in a way that doesn't bring everybody together. It doesn't unify. It's like, I'm going to do it this way, and this is what I'm going to do, and everybody's going to kind of live with it. But at the end of the day, the only thing constant has been the Jones. And everything else has been a rotating coaches, doing everything, quote, differently. But they haven't armed the staff with enough to win. And so I would say, from a coaching perspective, I think Schottenheimer is a great football coach. And I wish him the absolute best, like I do all these other guys. I hope they're all successful. But you have to be aligned with the owner and with the GM. And the problem is the owner and GM are the same person. So everybody looks to him, and he has to figure out how to get my run game to help Dak. How do we get another 2 receiver? How do we get defensive tackles? How do we get linebackers? Because all of those things equate to wins. It's not just about one thing.
I want to make a very specific point also. Okay, none of this has anything to do with Brian Schottenheimer.
Right.
What this has to do with, as we said earlier, you've got a philosophy. You have this level of drought. If you analyze it, you might say to yourself, the last time the Cowboys won the Super Bowl, free agency in the NFL was in its infancy. It had just begun. He has decided, Jerry Jones has decided, or decided back then, that's not going to be the way we build our football team. That's fine. At some point, you might look at this number. Can we put full screen number A15A up there, please? And say, maybe this is part of the reason this hasn't worked.
Wow.
Over the last 8 seasons, the Cowboys' average free agent spending ranking has been 27th in a league of 32 teams. The last time they ranked higher than 20th was 2016, and that year they were 19th. They don't believe in this. Well, someone might say, if one person wasn't making every decision, he might listen to someone who says, this is something you might want to consider doing differently because it obviously isn't working.
His pushback on that stat would be, well, we rank a lot higher than that in wins over that same period of time, right? Which is true. They have built good teams much more often than they haven't. The problem is it hasn't translated into playoff success. It hasn't gotten them back to the Super Bowl. I believe that if you went to Jerry and Stephen Jones and said, this one very expensive free agent signing guarantees that you will be in next year's Super Bowl, they would make
But that doesn't
signing.
exist,
Of
and
course.
we all know that
And
doesn't
but
exist.
My point is, like, that's the pushback you get when you talk to people in that organization about their philosophy on free agency. Again, and when Stephen Jones is air quoting, we're focused on that. He's giving an answer that's saying, yeah, we might look at doing some things differently, specifically in free agency. But that's the whole point, right? They were so sort of stubborn and aggressively anti last offseason, right? Like, they probably should have got a running back in the draft. When they didn't, they probably should have spent a little money to sign one instead of just bring back what was left of Ezekiel Elliott. That's an example of, again, somewhere in between the way they feel about free agency and the way the teams that go nuts in free agency every year, Jacksonville Jaguars or whoever, like somewhere in there, there's probably the right place to land, and they got to find that.
Meantime, it is Take It Back Tuesday.
How's it going, everybody? Villa Sports Network here. Just want to thank you guys for your support on the channel. Thank you guys for watching the video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Also want to kind of remind you to don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment on the video if you like as well. But regardless of the fact, thank you again for your support, and hope to see you on the next video.